Did you know that you do not actually need to eliminate carbohydrates in order to improve blood sugar levels and support metabolic health? In fact, many of the fastest improvements in glucose control are achieved not by restricting entire food groups, but by strategically adding specific foods that influence how your body processes sugar. Over years of clinical observation, it has been seen that when patients focus on nutrient-dense additions, rather than strict deprivation, their blood sugar readings often improve within days. And in many cases, they are able to maintain healthier glucose levels for months or even years without increasing medication dependency. The key mechanism behind this improvement is not simply calorie reduction, but the deeper biological interaction between food and insulin signaling pathways. Blood sugar regulation is primarily controlled by the hormone insulin, which acts as a key allowing glucose to enter cells from the bloodstream. When insulin resistance develops over time due to poor dietary habits, stress, inactivity, or chronic inflammation, cells begin to respond less effectively to insulin's signal. As a result, glucose remains in the bloodstream instead of being efficiently absorbed, leading to elevated blood sugar levels. In response, the pancreas compensates by producing more insulin, which may temporarily help but ultimately worsens the resistance over time, creating a cycle that becomes harder to break. Conventional approaches often rely heavily on medication to force glucose control, but this does not always address the underlying cellular dysfunction. A more sustainable approach involves improving insulin sensitivity naturally through dietary intervention. Certain foods can slow glucose absorption, reduce inflammation, and enhance insulin receptor responsiveness at a cellular level. These biological effects collectively help restore balance in glucose metabolism. The concept is not about eliminating carbohydrates entirely, but rather modifying how the body responds to them. For example, adding fiber-rich seeds, healthy fats, polyphenol-rich spices, and anti-inflammatory foods can significantly reduce post-meal glucose spikes. Fenugreek seeds, cinnamon, broccoli sprouts, avocado, chia seeds, fatty fish, walnuts, eggs, apple cider vinegar, and lentils each play a unique role in this process. Some slow gastric emptying, others improve insulin receptor sensitivity, while others reduce liver-driven glucose production or calm systemic inflammation. Together, these foods create a synergistic effect that supports more stable blood sugar levels throughout the day. The practical application of this approach does not require extreme dieting or elimination of everyday foods, but instead focuses on intelligent food pairing and consistent nutritional habits that gradually retrain the body's metabolic response. Building on this metabolic foundation, the next step is understanding how specific functional foods actively influence blood sugar regulation through different biological pathways, each contributing to improved insulin sensitivity and more stable glucose control. One of the most important categories includes high-fiber seeds such as fenugreek and chia, which form a gel-like substance when exposed to water in the digestive system. This gel slows the breakdown and absorption of carbohydrates, preventing sudden spikes in blood glucose after meals. Instead of a rapid influx of sugar entering the bloodstream, glucose is released gradually, allowing insulin to work more efficiently and reducing the burden on the pancreas. Alongside fiber-rich seeds, spices like cinnamon, particularly true or Ceylon cinnamon, contain polyphenolic compounds that mimic or enhance insulin activity at the cellular level, improving glucose uptake by muscle cells and reducing post-meal glucose elevation. These natural compounds essentially help insulin receptors respond more effectively, making the entire signaling process smoother and more efficient. Another powerful group includes cruciferous vegetables, especially broccoli sprouts, which are extremely rich in sulforaphane. This compound supports liver function by reducing excessive glucose production during fasting periods, particularly overnight, when the liver tends to release stored glucose into the bloodstream. By moderating this internal glucose output, fasting blood sugar levels can become significantly more stable over time. Healthy fats from foods such as avocado, walnuts, and fatty fish like salmon and mackerel further support blood sugar balance by reducing inflammation, which is one of the key drivers of insulin resistance. Chronic inflammation interferes with insulin signaling at the cellular membrane level, making it harder for glucose to enter cells. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fish and plant-based sources help calm this inflammatory response, improving cell membrane health and restoring more normal insulin function. Similarly, walnuts provide a combination of healthy fats, fiber, and protein that slows digestion and reduces the glycemic impact of carbohydrate-containing meals. Eggs, often misunderstood in traditional dietary advice, offer a highly stable source of protein and fat with minimal carbohydrate content, helping to stabilize morning glucose levels and reduce cravings later in the day through what is often referred to as the second meal effect. Apple cider vinegar, containing acetic acid, further supports blood sugar control by slowing gastric emptying and enhancing glucose uptake into muscle tissue, resulting in a noticeable reduction in post-meal glucose spikes when consumed before carbohydrate-containing meals. Finally, lentils represent a unique carbohydrate source that behaves differently from refined grains due to their high fiber, resistant starch, and protein content, leading to slower digestion and a gradual release of glucose into the bloodstream. When these foods are incorporated consistently into daily meals, they work collectively rather than individually, reinforcing one another's effects and gradually improving the body's metabolic response over time. Instead of relying on restriction, this approach emphasizes strategic addition, allowing individuals to maintain dietary satisfaction while simultaneously improving glycemic control. Over time, these dietary patterns can contribute to improved fasting glucose, reduced insulin resistance, better energy stability, and lower long-term risk of metabolic disease, provided they are combined with overall healthy lifestyle habits and appropriate medical supervision when needed. When these dietary strategies are applied consistently, the most important change does not happen overnight in a dramatic or instant way, but gradually through the steady recalibration of how the body handles glucose, insulin, and energy storage. Over time, the digestive system becomes more efficient at slowing carbohydrate absorption, while the liver reduces excessive glucose release, especially during fasting hours such as sleep. At the same time, the muscles and fat cells begin to respond more effectively to insulin signal, meaning that smaller amounts of insulin are needed to move glucose out of the bloodstream and into cells where it is used for energy. This reduction in insulin demand is one of the central goals of improving metabolic health, because chronic high insulin levels are closely linked to persistent insulin resistance and difficulty in maintaining stable blood sugar levels. As inflammation in the body decreases through the intake of omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and polyphenol-rich foods, the cellular environment becomes more responsive and less resistant to hormonal signaling. This improved internal communication allows glucose regulation to become more balanced and predictable throughout the day. Meal composition also plays a major role in this process, because combining carbohydrates with fiber, protein, and healthy fats significantly alters the glycemic response. Instead of experiencing sharp spikes followed by crashes in energy, individuals begin to notice smoother energy levels, reduced cravings, and improved satiety after meals. This is not only beneficial for blood sugar control, but also for long-term appetite regulation and weight management. Furthermore, the inclusion of fermented or acidic components, such as vinegar before meals, can influence enzyme activity in the digestive tract, leading to slower carbohydrate breakdown and a more controlled release of glucose into the bloodstream. Similarly, consistent intake of legumes such as lentils provides a steady source of complex carbohydrates that are naturally buffered by fiber and protein, resulting in a much lower glycemic impact compared to refined grains or processed starches. Over weeks and months, these repeated dietary patterns begin to recondition the body's metabolic response, shifting it away from constant glucose spikes and insulin surges toward a more stable and energy-efficient state. Importantly, this approach does not require extreme restriction or elimination of entire macronutrients.